And now, Search for Togetherness, the touching story of people just like yourself who struggle to overcome their misery in a small Midwestern town where the steel mill has been closed permanently. As our scene opens, Dr. Hunnicut, the recently widowed young surgeon, is preparing to leave his office for the day. Suddenly, the door opens, and Milo Vandervore, the young attorney who has never been married, enters.
Well, Dr. Hunnicut, I'm glad I caught you before you left the office. As you may know, I've taken over the defense at Agatha's murder trial.
Yes, I heard some talk about that during the noon hour today at Mother's cafeteria. Tell me, Vandervore, how is Agatha bearing up?
I'm sorry, but I can't discuss that, Dr. Hunnicut. I'm sure you can understand. It's privileged information between a lawyer and his client.
Of course. I never should have asked. In any event, I don't imagine that's what you came here to see me about.
No, I really wanted to talk to you about Agatha. Tell me, Hunnicut, what did the state of her emotional health seem to be the last time she was here in your office?
Sorry, Vandervore, but you must realize I can't answer that question. It would be highly unethical for a physician to discuss the emotional state of one of his patients.
No, I know, Doctor. I'm well aware of that, but these are not normal circumstances. Any scrap of information I can pick up may help. As you know, Agatha's on trial for her life.
Yes, and I can well imagine the terrible strain she must be under. Tell me, Vandervore, how is Agatha bearing up?
I'm afraid that's privileged information between lawyer and client, Hunnicut. I'm sure you realize how the prosecution might alter its case if word leaked out that Agatha is on the brink of a breakdown.
Of course. And I imagine the district attorney already has his suspicions about that. He seemed quite interested to learn about the state of Agatha's emotional health the last time I saw her.
That's what I wanted to talk to you about, Hunnicut. Agatha's appointment calendar shows that she was here in your office just 2 days before the crime took place. She's already told me that it was nothing but a routine checkup, but I'm more interested in knowing how her emotional health seemed to you at that time.
Well, I'd do most anything I could to help Agatha. I'm sure you know that, Vandervore, but discussing the emotional state of one of my patients would be highly unethical.
True, under normal circumstances, but you must realize what's involved here, Hunnicut. You can give me a professional opinion of Agatha's emotional state only 48 hours before the crime. That's vital information. The woman's on trial for her life.
And very likely on the edge of a breakdown as a result, I dare say.
Strange that you should make a statement like that, Hunnicut. I'm quite sure it wasn't made on the basis of pure guesswork. You must have known that Agatha was near the breaking point when you saw her in this very office 2 days before the crime. Isn't that true?
Confound it, Vandervore. Stop talking to me as if I were on the witness stand here.
I'm sorry, Doctor. I shouldn't have raised my voice, but, well, I'm desperate for any scrap of information that might save Agatha. I just don't know how much more of this tension she can stand. I'd say she's on the brink of a breakdown right now.
I'm sorry to hear that. I'd meant to ask you how she's bearing up.
Well, naturally, I can't go into detail. That's privileged information between lawyer and client. You can understand.
Of course. And it's quite all right. I can ask her myself. I'm due to stop by the courthouse on my way home and give Agatha some medication for her nervous condition.
Well, I certainly don't want to keep you, Doctor, and I'm glad we've had this little chat. It's just too bad you have nothing to say that might help Agatha.
I'm sorry about that, too, but were you really depending on my statement to turn the case around?
I'm not at liberty to say, Dr. Hunnicut.
And so, Dr. Hunnicut has failed to learn more from young attorney Milo Vandervore. But is Agatha's legal and emotional future really as dark as both men refuse to say it is? Perhaps we'll find out in the next exciting episode. Join us then for more touching drama on Search for Togetherness.
Hi there. And welcome again to America's favorite game show, The Hollywood Stars. Our celebrities are all in place for today's action, so let's meet the two contestants chosen from our studio audience to battle it out for a fortune in prizes. First, on my left, is Miss Hattie Pearlwood of Rochester, Minnesota. Miss Pearlwood is a direct descendant of Julius Caesar. She also collects aluminum cans for the Girl Scouts. I'd say you lead quite a busy life, Miss Pearlwood.
Yes, I do seem to have a hand in everything.
You certainly do. And let's meet your opponent for today, Mr. Wayne Nepvark of Green Bay, Wisconsin. Mr. Nepvark is a former United States Senator who now sells magazine subscriptions. Good to have you with us, sir.
Well, it's nice to be here, Barry. I always watch your show when they have it turned on in the lobby of the cheap hotel where I live.
It's a pleasure to hear that. Now, to play our game, the first question goes to you, Miss Pearlwood. Are you ready?
Well, yes, I'm certainly ready, but where are the celebrities? Don't we have to wait for them?
No, they're never with us in person. We do have the pictures of 4 of them posted up there on our Hollywood Stars game board, so just go ahead and pick a star, Miss Pearlwood.
Well, all right. It's kind of a disappointment not to see any celebrities in person, but I'll try to be a good sport about it. And take that picture in the lower corner. Looks like Freddie Bartholomew.
No, that's Donald O'Connor when he was still wearing knickers. But here's your question anyway. Remember, the object of the game is to light up all 4 corners of our celebrity square. So to light up that first corner, Miss Pearl would tell me, what team did Stan Musial play for during his entire Major League career?
He was with the St. Louis Cardinals.
Oh, I'm sorry. If you were a sports fan, you know that the St. Louis Cardinals are a professional football team. Stan Musial played baseball. So that lights up our first star for Mr. Nepvark.
Wait just a minute. There's a St. Louis Cardinals baseball team, too.
Well, our producer will be the judge of that. He's shaking his head no, so try to be a good sport. Let's give Mr. Nepvark a chance to pick a star.
Well, Barry, I think I'll go with Jane Withers.
That's a picture of Gabby Hayes before he had his teeth pulled out that you're pointing at, sir. Here's your question. Who said, "We have nothing to fear but fear itself"?
Gee, that's so profound that I'd say it was probably Danny Thomas.
Well, that could very well be. And you light up the second star, sir.
Wait a minute. What do you mean that could very well be? Danny Thomas didn't say that. It was Franklin D. Roosevelt.
Well, they both may have said it, but of course we didn't ask which one said it first, so try to be a good sport, and let's pick another star, ma'am.
All right. I'll take Red Fox.
That's a picture of Rodney Allen Rippey when he was older. But here's your question anyway. What is the largest city in Kentucky?
Louisville.
No, I'm terribly sorry. It's Memphis. All right, Mr. Nepvark.
Well, that's not right. Memphis isn't even in Kentucky.
Well, the question dealt with population, not geography, so just try to pay closer attention. Be a good sport, and let's turn back to Mr. Nepvark. One more star, and you've won the game, sir.
Well, I'll take the only picture left up there, Laurel and Hardy.
That's Paul Whiteman. A picture taken with Dick Van Dyke. But here's your question anyway. In what year did the Civil War end?
Gee, I always get those old-time wars mixed up. There was one we had in 1812, but I'm not sure what the name of it was. I guess it was the Civil War that ended in 1812.
No, I'm sorry.
It ended in 1865.
Ended in 1865, and you lit up that last star to win our game, Mr. Nepvark. And here are the plane tickets for your vacation in Greenland and the keys to your new motorbike.
Well, why is he getting all that stuff? I said the Civil War ended in 1865.
Yes, if it had been your turn, you might have gotten credit for that answer, Miss Pearlwood, too, but you've been a real good sport. I hope you enjoyed playing our game.
Well, how could I enjoy it? I was cheated something awful.
Yeah, we certainly enjoyed having you here. Let me remind you listeners at home to join us again soon. We'll be giving away a lot more prizes on the Hollywood Stars. And now it's time to pay another of our regular visits to the Bob and Ray Hobby Hut. And again, we have Mr. Hobby himself with us, Neil Klummer, editor of Wasting Time magazine. And I see, Neil, that you're over on the other side of our giant revolving stage with your special guest. So why don't you take over, Neil?
Thank you, Bob. I do have a very special guest with me today. He's Mr. Caleb Hilgard of Chicopee, Massachusetts. And he's certainly one of the nation's leaders in his own specialized hobby. But, Mr. Hilgard, I'm a little surprised to see that you've only brought a photo album with you today. I thought you and your fellow hobbyists all carried samples you've collected around in cellophane pouches and things.
Quite a number of the fellows do, Neil, and I have a lot of respect for their approach to the hobby, but I think the samples all look a lot alike, so I just have my picture taken each time, and that gives me a nice display of the whole thing.
Yes, I'd certainly tend to agree with that, Mr. Hilgard. And I noticed that Bob and Ray just slipped me a note here mentioning that we've neglected to say what your hobby is. So I wonder if you'd correct that oversight before we go ahead.
Yes, I'd be happy to, Neil. I collect haircuts.
Okay, well, that sets the record straight on that. And I'm sure most of the hobbyists listening already knew that you're a haircut collector, since your name is virtually a household word.
Right. I found that to be true in my travels around the country. In fact, about the only question I'm ever asked is how in the heck a person can collect haircuts.
Well, it's interesting that you should raise that point, Mr. Hilgard, because the first question I want to ask you is how in the heck can a person collect haircuts?
Coincidence. Well, you go to a barber shop to get one, just the same as people who get haircuts without making a hobby of it. Only difference is a collector has his haircut in a different style each time, and then he has his picture taken to show how it looks when it's cut that way.
And I suppose that's also on the fellows who save their trimmed-off hair, gather it up, and put it in a cellophane pouch.
Yes, that's right. But as I said, I don't save mine because it all looks alike. I just have my picture taken each time, and I keep those photographs here in my album.
Well, you really have a large collection here. I see several different versions of the crew cut, and here's a page boy Bob, and over here you look quite a bit like Martin Van Buren.
No, that's John Quincy Adams, Neil. I've never had my hair cut like Martin Van Buren.
Well, even so, it's a very extensive collection. How many photos do you have of yourself in here with different hairstyles?
Different hairstyles. I have 186, Neil, and that's quite a lot when you take one key factor into consideration. I have to wait for my hair to grow out before I can go get it cut again. So the number of new specimens I can add to my collection in a year's time is strictly limited.
Well, that brings up a point I wanted to ask you about, Mr. Hilgard. How many new specimens can you add to your collection in a year's time? I think the number would be strictly limited.
Yes, it is limited, Neil, but the number varies from year to year. For example, when I was still collecting different types of crew cuts, I could add 25 or 30 new specimens in a year. Now I'm into the more scarce varieties.
I notice you're wearing a Prince Valiant haircut today.
That's right. Going into a Prince Valiant from a Harpo Marx required almost 3 months of just sitting around waiting for my hair to grow out, so I probably won't be able to add more than 4 or 5 new pictures to my album this year.
Well, of course, that's the way it is with any hobby. As you become a more advanced collector, it takes longer to get new specimens.
Very true. I'm planning to do my hair like Sitting Bull next, and getting it long enough to braid should take most of 1976.
Well, I know it'll be a tedious job, but tell me, could you give any tips to beginners on how they might start a collection of haircuts?
Well, having the desire to build a nice collection is the big thing, of course, Neil, and then just go to a barber shop and ask for a cut in some outlandish style. That gets you started on your way. Of course, you have to remember to take a photographer to the barber shop with you. It's the only way you can get a good professional picture of each haircut for your album.
Well, those all sound like valuable tips for the young collector, and I want to thank you for being our guest here at the Hobby Hut today. Now, until our next get-together, this is Neil Klummer urging all of you at home to have a good day and find a good hobby.
And welcome now to General Pharmacy, the dramatic story of handsome young druggist Ross Flecknoy and his struggle to save mankind at the prescription counter of a pharmacy still technically owned by his aging father. As our scene opens today, Ross is busily dusting the bottles in his vitamin display when a distinguished-looking stranger suddenly approaches the prescription counter.
Good morning. To you, I probably seem like nothing more than a distinguished-looking stranger. However, I happen to be the world-famous surgeon, Dr. Knowlton Bradshaw, whose skilled hands have saved the lives of thousands. Currently, I'm suffering from a skin rash that I've been unable to cure with a mustard poultice, so my dermatologist has given me this prescription to be filled.
I'll be right with you, Doctor. I just have to finish cleaning up this vitamin display first. For some reason, my customers think the vitamins have lost their potency when there's too much dust on the bottles.
Well, there's a very sound medical reason for your customers to think that, but please don't be long. I'm due in surgery. It's difficult to operate when I have a rash that itches.
Hey, imagine seeing you here, Dr. Bradshaw. Remember me, former child piccolo prodigy Fritz Lipvogel? You saved my musical career after that gravel truck backed over my fingers.
Oh, yes, of course. You were the $12,000 cartilage transplant.
All right, Doctor, I can fill your prescription now.
Rebuilding your fingers was one of my most brilliant surgical accomplishments. Unfortunately, I don't do much of that delicate work anymore. You see, I have to keep stopping to scratch my rash.
Well, I just want you to know that I'm going to pay the whole $12,000 I owe you eventually, but it's been hard to save that much. I wasn't quite as good a piccolo prodigy as I thought, so now I just play on street corners for nickels and dimes.
Of course, I'm still asked to lecture before the College of Surgeons, but constant scratching in the operating room has made work on the human brain a virtual impossibility.
Being a doctor, you could write out a new prescription if you lost the one you brought. I wouldn't ask to see your license or anything.
It's quite a come-down for a man of my stature to be yanking out tonsils again, and the hospital has warned me that I may soon be demoted to experimenting on guinea pigs.
I still play some of the difficult classical pieces at home for Mother, but I hit too many sour notes to do it in public. I can't imagine why I ever thought I was a prodigy.
Of course, I have nothing against guinea pigs, but operating on them exclusively puts a famous surgeon into a much lower income bracket.
I don't suppose the people who listen to me on the street corners would want to hear classical music even if I could play it without hitting so many clinkers.
Sometimes I think I should just slash my wrists and end it all. But I can't seem to stop scratching long enough to hold the razor steady.
Doctor, if you won't give me your prescription, I'm afraid I'll have to wait on this other gentleman first.
I'd hate to sink to the point where I have to start making house calls to eke out an existence.
Oh, I didn't come in here to be waited on. I just stepped inside for a minute to warm my hands so I can play a few more old favorites for the people down on the corner.
I've always enjoyed the old favorites myself. They lift my spirits and even help my rash by reminding me of better days when a promising medical career lay ahead of me.
Well, if there's anything I can do musically to help your skin condition, just say the word.
You're very kind to offer, and I feel certain that you can be of assistance. Please play something. If you would, please.
And so, handsome young druggist Ross Flecknoy again offers the facilities of his prescription department to aid the sick and downtrodden. But can even a dedicated pharmacist stand idly by while his customers cure each other? Be sure to join us next time when we'll hear the mother of piccolo prodigy Fritz Lipvogel say,
You can't even play the old favorites worth the lick anymore, son.
in the next thrilling episode of General Pharmacy. And now we welcome you again to our popular Bob and Ray public service feature, Widen Your Horizons, portion of our show where we help you acquire new skills for leading a fuller, happier life. And our subject today is how to use dental floss. To deliver the guest lecture on the topic, we have with us Mr. Harvey L. Stemford of the Honolulu Oral Hygiene Products Company. I assume that means they make a lot of dental floss in Hawaii, Mr. Stemford?
Gee, I don't have any figures on that. I know our plant's located in Michigan, and I think there's one in Illinois, but I'm not sure about Hawaii.
Well, I guess I just assumed that where your firm is located, when you told me it was called the Honolulu Oral Hygiene Products Company. Now you say it's in Michigan, huh?
Yes, but it's less than a mile from the Indiana state line, so maybe that's the part that confused you.
Probably so. Any case you were mentioning before you went on the air that most households contain dental floss, but that very few people know how to use it. That struck me as rather strange, and I asked if you would explain it.
Well, it's really not strange when you think about it. Most people receive their dental floss as a Christmas gift, you know.
Yes.
Since it's not the type of item you'd buy for yourself. But it doesn't come with instructions on the package. Of course, you hate to ask the person who gave it to you what it is, so you just stay stupid.
Well, I can see how it might work out that way now that you've explained it. Why don't you go right ahead with the lecture you've planned?
Thank you. I believe I will. Now, the first thing to remember is that there are two distinct types of dental floss.
That would be waxed and the unwaxed.
No, that would be the kind that comes in a round package where the loose end sticks up through the top, and the kind that comes in square boxes where the loose end sticks out through the side.
Guess I was misinformed on that distinction. Oh, go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to do that a whole lot. Now, the first step is to pull the loose end up through the top or out through the side, depending on which kind of package you have. And when you have about 18 inches of it unrolled, you cut it off.
Of course, you cut it by using that sharp little prong right on the package there, huh?
No, in our company's package, the little prong isn't sharp enough for that, so you cut it off with scissors. And then you move onto the main part, which is running the dental floss back and forth between your teeth. Notice that in order to do that...
Well, wait a minute. Just a minute, Mr. Stemford. Will you take the dental floss out of your mouth, please?
Okay, what for? I was doing it right.
I'm not disputing that, but nobody could understand what you're saying. Want to start again?
Well, there's really no need to start again. That already takes care of the upper left. But notice how we reverse the hands when we go to the lower right.
Oh, Mr. Stemford, stop it. Will you please? You're doing it again.
Doing what again?
Talking with your hand in your mouth.
Well, that's just where your hand winds up when you're flossing.
Well, then can't you explain it without actually doing it so we can understand what you're saying?
Well, not very well. You see, when you're doing the uppers on one side, you have a different hand in your mouth than when you're doing the lowers on the other side. But I can never remember which is which until I actually do it, you know.
In other words, there's no way our audience can ever understand your description of how to use dental floss.
Over the radio, I guess not. I mean, I usually do this at junior high schools and places like that, you know, where the audience can see me. I hadn't realized the visual part of my lecture was that important, so, well, I'm sorry.
Well, it's all right. It's as much our fault as it is yours.
Well, no, not really. I should have been able to envision which hand I've got in my mouth, you know, without actually putting it there, but I can't seem to. However, I might tell your listeners, you have a few moments?
Just a few, yeah.
I might tell your listeners that dental floss is also good for stringing beads, if they can't figure out what else to do with it. Goodbye.
You've been listening to a lecture by Mr. Harvey L. Stemford on the subject of how to use dental floss. Join us again soon when you'll have a chance to learn still another valuable new skill on our next session of Widen Your Horizons. And now, let's take a Bob and Ray stroll down memory lane as we recall with a touch of nostalgia the music and events that shaped all our lives in that glorious year.
It was the gay, carefree year when 1,200 Huguenots were hanged in the Netherlands for violating a royal edict.
The light-hearted year when fun-loving Ivan the Terrible massacred all the residents of an entire city for their plot to assassinate the Crown Prince.
And remember the joy we all felt when we learned it was the year William Shakespeare had been born, after scholars predicted that such a person would never actually exist.
It was also the year the Spaniards founded St. Augustine, Florida, apparently by mistake.
And the zany year when it was all the rage to execute archbishops of Canterbury as fast as new ones could be appointed.
Who can ever forget the stunts we pulled and the fun we had in that glorious year, 1565.
And remember how we all listened to the late evening news from the town crier to find out if our particular group would be the next to be persecuted?
Now we felt a little twinge of regret when one of our favorite relatives was finally tracked down in the weekly witch hunt.
It was a big year for the Black Plague and the Potato Famine and Sir Francis Drake.
Marco Polo was back from the Far East with the formulas for spaghetti and gunpowder. Mom had her hands full trying to remember which recipe made which.
And the French were messing around in upstate New York and reaching the conclusion that it wasn't worth the bother.
And in every torture chamber and at every public execution, people were whistling this catchy little tune.
Yes, 1565 was truly a year to remember. Mary, Queen of Scots, was promising a return to normalcy, and the Spanish Armada was making sure it didn't happen.
The parents of the first white child to be born in the New World didn't even know each other yet, and Galileo was still throwing stuff out the window to see how fast it would fall.
And the people who'd started the 100 Years' War weren't even sticking around to finish it. And on ships around the world, sailors were having their mutinies and scurvy outbreaks to the accompaniment of this never-to-be-forgotten song.
Yes, one era had ended, but nobody was taking the trouble to start a new one.
We all stood at the brink of disaster, and most of us decided to go ahead and jump in.
Wherever we looked, the world was changing so fast that nothing of importance seemed to be happening.
And as we found out later, nothing of importance was. Truly, it was a year well worth forgetting, that glorious year, 1565.